Hey, I'm Mike Wagner Show, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all you need. Looking for a professional website without breaking your budget? Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs at below the competition way. Call today at 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960. Or email to support at sonicwebstudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show. Get 10% off your first order. Sonic Web Studios. Take your image to the next level. Also, the Mike Wagner Show can be heard on the MikeWagnerShow.com. You can check our Facebook page at Facebook.com/The Mike Wagner Show. You can download and listen on Facebook, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Also on Anchor FM, Radio Public, iTunes, Google Play, Apple, Deezer, Stitcher, more. Take the Mike Wagner Show with you on any mobile device. Subscribe to the Mike Wagner Show on the YouTube channel and follow the Mike Wagner Show on Instagram and Twitter today. We're here with a wonderful lady who was raised in Tokyo and lived in Vietnamese Laos during the Vietnam conflict, and she's an American sociobiologist and also a futurist, and also has a couple of books out called Watchmans Rattle, On the Verge, and also she's a key contributor to Aftershock, which is available on Amazon. We'll talk about that. She's also the founder and CEO of one of the largest technology marketing firms in California, developing an extensive track record of launching game-changing technologies, and has dealt with a lot of Fortune 500 companies, including the Silicon Valley. And of course, just looking to the future, working with a lot of major clients. And live, ladies and gentlemen, from her wonderful library, and talking about Aftershock, the Watchmans Rattle, and more, live, Rebecca Costa. Rebecca, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me, Mike.
It's a pleasure. So you're an American sociobiologist and a futurist, and you were raised in Tokyo, and you also lived in Vietnam during the Vietnam conflict, and you got a couple of books, Watchman's Rattle, On the Verge. You also have a syndicated column as well, too, and you're a global expert on fast adaptation, and we'll talk about that. But first of all, just tell us how you got started.
Well, when I got out of college, like everybody else, I wasn't sure what kind of job I could get with a degree in sociobiology. and so I moved home, and it just so happened that my parents lived in what later became Silicon Valley. It was ground zero for Silicon Valley. And so the only jobs that were available to people like me who just had a general degree were technology jobs. So I was very lucky to get on with a technology company. This was late in the 70s, early 80s, when semiconductors were just coming into existence, and Steve Jobs and Wozniak were getting it together to offer personal computing, and there was just a boom. It was a truly a renaissance period, and I was able to ride that wave until eventually I formed my own marketing company in Silicon Valley, and I was able to work with some of the pioneers, the greatest pioneers that we've ever produced in this country. And actually, I formed my own company, sold it, and when I retired, I was too young and I had too much energy, so I decided I would take a shot at writing a book on what I thought was happening in technology. Now, it was a dark horse for sure, because it was a book about the fact that our biological spacesuit that you and I are trapped in evolves at a very slow rate. It's not like we're going to get new brains next week if we need them.
Very true.
And yet the pace of change and technology is accelerating. And so there is this gap that begins to occur as civilizations build, their social progress begins to accelerate faster and faster, and we fall further and further behind. And in a way, you can think of technology as being compensatory. It's trying to help us. We can't possibly remember all the phone numbers that are in our little devices. In fact, we can remember very few of them anymore. And we rely on our handheld phones to do everything from calculate a tip at a restaurant to remind us that we have a doctor's appointment. And these are all extensions to what our brain can no longer manage. We can't keep up with what's going on a day-to-day basis. I had no idea that the book was very prescient. And in a way, I had predicted that the society would become increasingly irrational, and the behavior of our leaders would become increasingly irrational and not empirically fact-based. And I used many historical examples of where this gap got too large and eventually the society collapsed. And as a result of that, the book went to 27 countries and I was tagged as a futurist. I don't know what a futurist really is, but they tagged me as a futurist. And I've been speaking all over the world. My books became bestsellers on Amazon, and my career just took a right turn.
And again, back to the thing about the technology with the smartphones. Do you think the smartphones have actually made people smart, or they have actually made people, or you say, you know, not as smart? It's supposed to be like making people smarter, but it seems like it's been the other way around.
It's making us smart in a different way. You know, so much of what we considered to be smart used to be memory. People who remembered things, who could read a book and remember, you know, the contents of the book. And don't you remember in school a lot of dates you had, the historical dates you had to memorize, and math formulas you had to memorize?
Oh my gosh, yes. I have to go through my microfiche in order to do that. I really have to dust them off, though. That's the thing. Too many dust mites.
But we had to memorize things, you know. I mean, a lot of it. We had to memorize how to spell things and grammar rules. And, you know, if you think about most of education, and I think this is why education is stumbling right now, was based on memorizing things so that we could retain them later. When we needed them, we could draw upon them. And that whole part of education is no longer necessary, because even if you could retain something, it would be outdated. Chances are you'd remember something and it has changed, you know, by the time that you need to remember it. And so as a result, you see things like medical education. You know, a lot of the conferences I go to are medical conferences. And one of the big things that we're struggling with right now is how to educate doctors, because they get into debt. They pay a lot of money to get a medical education, that by the time they graduate, everything that they've learned has changed. There's new technology and new methods, you know, and so outside of the basic fundamentals of human physiology, how to treat people is moving at such an incredible pace with new biotech solutions and genetic engineering and treatments. You know, doctors, it's very hard to stay ahead of what's available.
It sounds like it's going at a really fast rate, and it's almost getting to be impossible where you're trying to keep up. And where do you see the next trend when it comes to medicine or health or diseases or cures or anything like that? Where do you see?
Well, I see that in the 80s and 90s, we were very focused on data production. But that train, you know, kind of got away from us. It left the station and started speeding up. So all the data in the world, we realized, was not useful to us unless we could access it, or it was actionable. And so the story of the next decade is really going to be artificial intelligence and data analytics, things like predictive analytics, where we can take millions and billions of data points and see patterns that we never could see before. And those patterns are allowing us to get out ahead of problems before they even occur. The easiest example I often give is we can now predict that a person is going to trip and fall with 85 to 90% accuracy, that they're going to trip and fall within the next 3 weeks.
Wow.
And people say, that's impossible. You know, what are you, like a psychic or a magician? And I go, no, because we've now discovered that your normal walking gait changes between 3 and 5 centimeters, and it's indiscernible by the human eye. And when that happens, that is the precursor to you tripping and falling. And so for the elderly, this has huge ramifications, because think about it, most elderly people, when they trip and fall, break a hip or a leg or something, that's the end of living independently. They've got to go into assisted living. So, you know, by simply devising something like a Fitbit for your ankle, we would be able to ping your phone or ping your caretaker's phone and say, get off of uneven surfaces, get into physical therapy and repair that walking gait, and avoid many, many falls that are unfortunate.
And do you think AI is going to take over common sense, or like say with you know, regular thinking?
I don't even know if common sense exists anymore.
A
I
lot of
mean, give
people,
me an example of common sense these days.
a lot of people ask me that question too. It's just like, common sense. And some people just debate about that, especially with AI. And then the question I had about AI as well, too, that people have come to me is that, will AI replace many jobs or human labor in the job market?
Yes, and there's nothing to fear about AI. I mean, you can't hold progress back. Even if it
Hmm.
is taking jobs, you can't say, well, that's bad, let's not use it. I mean, that when everybody else will use it, China will use it, Russia will use it. We're competing on a global basis. So there's no such thing as holding progress or technology back. That's never worked
Hmm.
in the history of humankind. So you're kind of stuck with whatever we invent. The real question is whether governments can get out ahead of the dark side of progress. And there always is a dark side. One of the examples I frequently give is when Charles Lindbergh flew the Atlantic Ocean, he was the recipient of many peace prizes. People don't know this, but he was up for the Nobel Prize and a number of other prizes because it was believed that if you could shuttle diplomats across large oceans and bodies of water, that they could meet face to face, and it would probably broker a lot more peace. We'd have fewer wars. Nobody was thinking at the time we would use those planes to drop bombs
Hmm.
across the ocean. And the same thing goes for the internet. The internet has a lot of wonderful upside, but it also has it also gave birth to identity theft and cyber warfare and cyberbullying and things that we never had before. So there's this illusion that all progress is just good, and is wonderful. And we never stop to realize that there's always a dark side. There's never been anything invented by humankind where there wasn't a dark side. And I think that that's the problem that we have about gun control and every other thing that's been invented by man, is that we want it to be all good, and we just don't get out ahead of it and say, well, yeah, but anything that's good can be misused.
Hmm. And that's very true too. It sounds more like a double-edged sword. And we'll talk about some of your book as well too, and some of your other experiences. What's coming up ahead? You listen to the Mike Wagner Show at the MikeWagnerShow.com, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at SonicWebStudios.com for all your needs. Looking for a professional website without breaking your budget? Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs that blow the competition away. Call today at 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960. Or email to support at SonicWebStudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show. Get 10% off your first order. Sonic Web Studios. Take your image to the next level. Also, the Mike Wagner Show can be heard on the MikeWagnerShow.com. You can check our Facebook page at Facebook.com/The Mike Wagner Show. You can download and listen on Facebook, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Also on Anchor FM, Radio Public, iTunes, Google Play, Apple, Stitcher, Deezer, more. Take the Mike Wagner Show with you on any mobile device. Subscribe to the Mike Wagner Show on the YouTube channel. Also follow the Mike Wagner Show on Instagram and Twitter today. We're here with Rebecca Costa, the author of Watchmans Rattle, On the Verge, also key contributor to Aftershock, which is available on Amazon. She's an American sociobiologist and futurist. And we talk about what's been happening in the future. A lot of things have come as well, too. And, just an amazing global expert on fast adaptation, seeing the big picture. We're seeing the big picture in a lot of things. And let's talk about your book as well, too, Watchman's Rattle. And tell us a little bit about the book and what inspired you to write it.
Well, again, that was my first book, and I was observing these patterns in history where societies really experienced unilateral collapse. And I realized that most of the historical books that we have focus on the triggering event, whatever happened that immediately caused the Mayan Empire to collapse or the Roman Empire. We knew a lot about the triggering event, but we didn't really think about the symptoms. How was a society behaving beforehand? And that is why I wrote The Watchman's Rattle, because there are specific symptoms that societies begin to show beforehand. And one of them is that that the day-to-day existence of the common people becomes so complex that they become confused about what is an empirical fact and what is an unproven belief. And eventually, over time, that percolates up to leadership, and leadership becomes confused between facts and an unproven belief. Now, I wrote this book 10 years ago, not knowing that we would become increasingly irrational in our public policy. But the book is still in the top 1%. After 10 years later, it's still in the top 1% of Amazon's business book sales. So
Wow.
I'm very grateful for all the supporters that might be listening today. And then I wrote a follow-on book on The Verge that was really about predictive analytics and how we really know much more about future outcomes than we've ever known before, such as knowing when someone was going to trip and fall. We now can estimate that a person might become addicted to opioids within 85 to 90% by looking at medical records, their genetic inheritance, their behaviors. We're able to predict a lot of things and really head them off. Imagine if all these people that are addicted to opioids had been given the option in a doctor's office to fill out a questionnaire and allow them to look at their medical records, and then the doctor came back and said, you're in the 90 percentile of becoming addicted to the opioid, so I'm going to put you on a different pain management program. We now know that almost all the people that are addicted to opioids got started on a legal doctor's prescription. So as a result, the doctors could have headed that off if they simply used artificial intelligence to do an analysis of whether someone was predisposed to be addicted. So, there's a lot of problems we could head off, and that is what AI and predictive analytics is at their best at. Now, in terms of the third book, Aftershock, I was very excited to be one of 50 futurists invited to contribute.
Wow.
Because this is the sequel to Alvin Toffler's landmark book, Future Shock, which was 50 years ago, and almost all of his predictions actually came true. He was so prescient and so spot on. And so 50 years later, the Toffler Foundation, in conjunction with John Schroeder, decided that they would talk to the 50 top futurists in the world and ask us to look 50 years out, 10, 25, 50 years out, and talk about what we think is coming our way. And I was very honored to be one of the contributors, but also one of just a handful of women futurists. There aren't many of us around.
That's amazing. Sounds like you got modern day Nostradamus in the works as well, too. That's amazing. Nostradamus, it makes me think of it.
Well, it does. But, it used to be that futurists were associated with psychics and astrologists and people like that. But technology futurists actually use AI and predictive analytic tools to look at what trends are likely and what outcomes are likely. And when you have millions and millions of data points, it's not that hard to figure out what 1,000,001 is going to be. In fact, the more data you have, the more accurate your prediction of the next number will be, because you can look for patterns within those number sequences. And so, I don't like to say I'm a futurist at a cocktail party, because people think that I know what the stock market's going to do.
Yeah, that's dangerous. I have to say that's very, very dangerous. I have to say that. I don't trust the stock market, to be honest with you.
Well, I don't blame you. It's become so complex. When you think about it, our brains are designed to understand barter. I have some carrots, you have some eggs, we meet in the street, we bicker a little bit. Both of us think we got the best deal. We trade and we leave. That's what our brains are suited for. Our brains have not fundamentally changed in thousands of years. And so that's what we understand. But you get out on Wall Street and you ask people, well, explain a credit default swap to me. And even the people who are engaged in high finance in this country don't really understand how currency is valued. And they don't really know why, when the US market goes down, every other stock market in the world goes down.
Mm-hmm.
If you think about it, every company that's doing business couldn't be worth less at the same exact moment in time in an industry. So it doesn't make sense that we ride these waves.
hmm And of course, it makes me think about the Brexit as well too. That's been the big story. And of course, you had like the Ottoman Empire, the fall of it. You had the fall of the Roman Empire, and of course, you got the British exit of the European Union. And of course, that kind of just goes along with it. Maybe there are symptoms of it, and I don't know if you agree, disagree with the exiting of Britain getting out of the EU.
Well, I was against the euro. I was against all of Europe going to the euro because there's a principle in evolution that goes like this. Any drive toward singularity is a drive toward extinction.
hmm
This is the reason why you have lots of types of ants and lots of types of fish and lots of birds. The reason is because when the environment changes and becomes hostile, some of those birds will have what's conducive to the new environment and the others will perish. They will die. And so you want variety. Variety is the antidote, right, to singularity.
hmm
So when you get a lot of countries that have different economic systems, as we used to have before World War II, if Germany had trouble, it didn't affect Italy, didn't
hmm
affect the United States. You didn't see all stock markets going down at the same time, or and all going up at the same time. We
hmm
didn't have this interdependency. So when the euro came about, I thought the European Union was just a bad idea because it was driving towards singularity. I think this is much more stable. I felt, and I predicted this when the euro came about. I said all it's going to take is one country to fudge on their financial statements, and they're going to
hmm
bring everybody down. And that country was Greece, followed by Spain, followed by Italy. And who was propping them up? The Germans,
hmm
the International Monetary Fund. They couldn't go broke.
I was just going to mention about Greece as well too. They're the most prosperous in the world. They had they pride on service, they pride on people, they pride on value, and they're like, hey, what's mine is yours, and yours is yours, and everything. They're very generous. And then the euro comes out. It's like they're floating, and then all of a sudden when I was it the drachma is their currency that began to tumble, and so did their economy as well too. And right now they're going, stabilizing. Spain, the same thing. It's like what's yours is mine, or mine is yours, and everything. So yes, it's like I totally agree with you on that. Just getting back to the currencies is probably the best way to solve problems.
It really is. You want diversity in economic markets. You don't want singularity. Singularity is very dangerous. The truth is, we will have an economic correction. When I talk about unilateral collapse, unilateral economic collapse, the fact is we've become so singular in our economic models that we are going to see a correction, and it's going to be a painful correction, and it will be what some people call a disastrous collapse. But remember that a correction is necessarily not a bad thing. It can also mean that we're going to rebuild,
Mm-hmm.
learning, and take lessons from what caused the collapse. So the collapse of the Mayan Empire, the collapse of the Roman Empire didn't mean that those societies, everyone died in them. It just means that people regrouped into smaller communities and that the society built itself back up in a different form.
And do you see an economic collapse in the U.S. sometime in 2020, or would it be past 2020?
No, I don't. I think anybody who tries to predict the timing is insane. This is going to happen really fast. It's going to come up on us like an earthquake.
Mm-hmm.
It's literally when you see the collapse of a currency, it generally happens overnight. And
Mm-hmm.
I believe that economic correction will happen radically because um, when you the reason it's difficult to predict is because if you make small corrections along the way, the final correction is almost unnoticeable because you're making adjustments. But if you fail to make adjustments along the way, the final correction is always painful and jarring and radical. And I don't think that we've made sufficient corrections and adjustments along the way. I think that what we're doing is treading water. And the question then is, how long can you tread water?
And that's very true. And do you think would it be just as bad or worse than the collapse in 1929, the Great Depression, or the collapse of the housing market in 2008?
I think it'll be much worse because the income disparity between the wealthiest and the poorest is greater. And that would set us up for a worse situation.
hmm I see what you mean. Okay, and we'll talk more.
But that income inequality has to be corrected, and it will correct itself. It's just not going to correct itself in a very nice way. It'll be very painful for most of the citizens of the United States. The government will have to step in, but not in the way that they did by bailing out the banks. They'll have to bail out the citizens.
It sounds to me that the government bailing out the banks was just a band-aid and it didn't help. And of course, with General Motors being bailed out by the government, I personally thought that it was going to really decrease GM's value in terms of quality. It seemed like that, let GM collapse and just rebuild themselves. That's what it sounds like to me.
Well, the government, everyone knows this by just even watching the movie or reading about Too Big to Fail. The government their hand was forced. There wasn't really any other way for this to correct. You can't have all the major financial institutions fail at the same time, which was effectively what was going to happen. Everybody had overvalued real estate. Everybody had bad debt on their books. This was all banks and all financial institutions. So
Wow.
the government allowed a couple of them to take hits, and the rest of them they really had to bail out. I think there are times where, we can't, it's not business as usual. And we're going to get there at some point because we know that our debt is skyrocketing and there's really no way to cure that debt. We've never been in the territory that we're in right now, where the debt is rising to a point where there's actually no economic strategy under which we can resolve the debt other than hyperinflation. Remember that when you experience hyperinflation, the size of the debt seems smaller because $10 buys you a lot less. So a $10 debt seems like a 5-cent debt today. So hyperinflation could cure it. But of course, again, that would be very cruel to anybody who's not a billionaire. Hyperinflation hurts the middle class and lower classes the worst.
And it's very understandable too. And we'll talk more about what you see in the future as well. You talked about 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago. More predictions and more. You listen to the Mike Wagner Show at the MikeWagnerShow.com, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at SonicWebStudios.com for all your needs. Looking for a professional website without breaking your budget? Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs that blow the competition away. Call today at 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960. Or email to support@SonicWebStudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show. Get 10% off your first order. Sonic Web Studios. Take your image to the next level. Also, the Mike Wagner Show can be heard on the MikeWagnerShow.com. You can check our Facebook page at Facebook.com/The Mike Wagner Show. You can download and listen on Facebook, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Also on Anchor FM, Radio Public, iTunes, Google Play, Apple, and more. Take the Mike Wagner Show with you on any mobile device. Subscribe to the Mike Wagner Show on the YouTube channel. Also, follow the Mike Wagner Show on Instagram and Twitter today. We're here with Rebecca Costa, the author of Watchmans Rattle, On the Verge, and a key contributor to Aftershock, available on Amazon. She's an American sociobiologist and futurist. And we talked about some of the things that have happened that was predicted in the future, and talked about some of the things that happened 10, 20, 30 years ago, which was going to happen, which applies today. And now the big question is, since you're part of the 50 futurists in the book, what's going to happen, you think, 10, 20, 30, 40, even 50 years from now?
Well, I'm again, I'm a futurist, but I'm a futurist in the area specifically of science and technology. And there are many exciting things that are happening, starting with healthcare. We're going to be introducing nanobot technology, where robots, most people are familiar with robots that are very large that, could lift things that humans can't lift, or maybe Roomba, vacuum robots and things like that. But they don't think about robots being miniaturized to smaller than the size of a single human cell. And the fact that these robots could be injected into you and they can be programmed to eliminate cancer in your body.
Oh,
And then
wow.
just simply eliminated with your waste. They'll turn themselves off. So we will no longer be cutting you open and trying to remove cancers or any kind of disease, including the plaques that are pre-Alzheimer's in the brain. These miniaturized robots will be ingested into your body, either in a pill form or they will be injected into you. And they will be programmed to eliminate specific diseases, and then you will just simply urinate them out. And so this will be the future of how surgeries are done, how tumors are removed, how disease is cured. In addition, these robots will be able to communicate to your cell phone. They'll be able to tell you, they'll be able to tell you that you're low on vitamin C, or that you metabolize vitamin A quicker than other people. And this will have a huge impact on nutrition, because when you think about it, we kind of shoot for a middle of this is the nutrition all bodies need. When scientists like myself know better, I happen to metabolize caffeine very, very fast. But I work in an office where one gal that I work with, she has a cup of coffee. I mean, she's bouncing off the roof. She doesn't metabolize it at all. She goes like the ever ready bunny.
Oh my gosh.
And so we know that you metabolize minerals and vitamins and nutrition at different rates, and everybody's body is very different. And imagine if you can communicate from the inside out. Now, I'll give you an example of a nanobot at use right now. They're now spraying, in lieu of pesticides, nanobots on experimental plants, and the plants are taking the nanobots in and communicating to watering devices using wireless technology and letting the watering device know when it needs water.
Wow.
And what nutrients it needs to get the best yield for the farmer.
Amazing.
So every plant in the field is different. We water them all the same, just like we tell everybody to eat the same things and do the same amount of exercise, when every plant and every human is different. So this is going to be very radical. What's going to happen is technology and science are going to be very personalized to your specific physiology, to your particular body.
Wow. In fact, I was just looking at my cell phone as well, too. It says, have some coffee with Rebecca Costa after this program as well, and having some right now. But I think in terms of coffee, it's like, I like mine black, but I don't know if it's going to metabolize yet. I guess we'll find out later after I take a sip or so.
Well, just imagine a device inside your body, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it knows exactly what nutritional deficiency you happen to have when you wake up from your sleep. Let's say in the morning, your body has processed all the vitamin C out of your body, and you go to get your coffee. Now imagine a 3D printing type of device fixing your coffee for you, but putting in a little bit of vitamin C in there and a little bit of vitamin A and a little bit of vitamin D, because you don't want to start out the day negative in those things. So, right? So your coffee is going to be mixed to give you whatever your body is deficient.
Wow. I am so looking forward to it when I go to a Starbucks. I'll take a latte with vitamin C, please.
Well, you won't have to, because as soon as you go into Starbucks, you'll say, I'll have a latte with whatever my body says it needs.
Wow.
And we'll formulate that drink according to whatever has been assessed within your body, if you think about that. I know it's hard to wrap our heads around this, but this idea that we're going to be taking a knife and cutting you open to find out what's going on inside you is rather prehistoric. It's going to look like bloodletting 100,000 years from now. People are going to go, you used to what? Cut an organ out of a person to fix them? I mean, we forget, we practiced bloodletting for 200 years. in
Mhm.
spite of the fact that the patients were dying. So medicine doesn't change that fast, but we're in for a major revolution in terms of medicine. We aren't going to be curing people by performing surgeries, removing organs, or anything like that. Robots, artificial intelligence powered robots will be communicating to external devices and will be giving you the food that you need, will tell you when you have a disease, will cure your diseases, and will perform any surgical operations that you need within your body.
Wow, that is amazing. And is this going to affect like the cost of healthcare costs or anything like that? Do you think the care for cost, like say with healthcare right now, is obviously outrageous? Is this going to decrease the cost of healthcare when it comes to having these robots in your system and cleaning you out?
Well, absolutely it will. As soon as you open someone's body, you're exposing them to sepsis, infection, a long rehabilitation for the body to heal itself. You want, any physician will tell you, you want to cure someone with the least amount of disruption. Think about chemotherapy. What is
Mm.
chemotherapy? Chemotherapy is we're going to poison your entire body to get rid of the bad guys.
Oh my gosh.
That's
Yeah.
what it is. It doesn't
Hmm.
make any sense. It's all we have today until we have nanobot technology. And then the nanobots will take care of the bad guys for you, and then you'll eliminate them. So, what what we're doing right now is rather savage.
Hmm.
And so we're long overdue, and it will drastically impact healthcare.
Wow. I am so looking forward to this. In fact, we could be doing an interview while say with a robot will come in and just say just check on no cancer, how you doing, and what you need and everything. Like you and I are talking, the robots are working on say, hey, I'm gonna get rid of this cancer cell, and you need more white blood cells or something like that, or
Or
let's
that you're
control your
dehydrated. How do you know if you're dehydrated?
right, exactly. That is
I mean,
amazing.
you're relying on being thirsty, right? But by the time you're thirsty, you've been dehydrated a while.
Uh-huh.
So, nobody knows if they're getting the right nutrition. Nobody knows if they're dehydrated, and nobody knows if they're sick until they have symptoms.
Hmm.
So this is what one of the benefits of being able to have nanotech. It's called nanotechnology, and this is going to be great in the future. There's so many wonderful innovations. I know people are afraid of the future, and they have an ambivalent relationship with technology. But when you think about the fact that we now can collect solar energy in outer space, our own NASA has invented space-based solar, where they can take panels in outer space, not solar panels on Earth. The collection rates are much more efficient in outer space. And then using very low-grade microwave technology, beam that energy down to small little dishes,
Oh my.
that are a tenth the size of your direct TV dish. And
Wow.
imagine having those on your house, on your car. We can get solar energy from outer space to run everything. We don't
Wow.
even need to do it here on the Earth. And it would mean no pollution, no additional warming of the Earth. It's fantastic. And we already have it. For people who are interested, they can go to NASA's website and type in space-based solar, and they'll show you exactly how it works. This concept was proved 20 years ago.
Amazing. We'll have to check that out. And what about the future of the automobile, say in 2020, 2030, 2040, and beyond?
Well, 5G technology is really necessary for driverless cars to come to their full promise,
Hmm.
because you don't want cars that have to go communicate to some server and come back to you. You really don't want that. What you want is cars talking to other cars. So imagine getting in a car and that car says to the other car, "Hey, I got to make a right turn here. Make a space for me." And
Uh-huh.
it could get in. So in order to do that, we need 5G technology. And unfortunately, 5G technology isn't where, these commercials from Verizon and everybody are trying to make us believe that is, because these antennas can only transmit data for very short distances. and you need a lot of antennas. You need thousands and thousands of them all around in order to be able to carry out driverless technology the way that we want it. But pretty soon we'll be in cars that don't have steering wheels because you won't need them. And you won't have gauges to say how fast you're going, or or whether you have gas in them. They'll be only designed for the passenger's comfort. They'll have entertainment consoles, and they'll just basically be passenger vehicles. There'll be no driving per se.
Mm-hmm. And I can imagine this. Watch where you're going, you idiot, will take on a whole different meaning, or will be passe.
It's passe. There won't be any such thing. There'll be no there'll be no DMV. There'll be no traffic lights, no stop walks. You won't need that because the cars will stop automatically if they sense that there's a human being. All of the rules of the road will dramatically change. You don't need speed limits. You don't need police officers writing tickets. All of these things will change.
That is amazing. And I can imagine the Jetsons coming into fruition. I have to say that. So,
well, that's right. And whatever works on the ground will soon find itself to the air. We'll have single passenger planes that will come and pick you up. They won't necessarily be helicopters or airplanes, but they'll pick you up and they'll be able to fly you where you want to go. You won't need any. We're almost there with drone technology. The military's using single passenger drones to evacuate emergency patients to military hospitals. And they're just very long. They look like helicopters with two propellers on them, but they're manless.
Wow, that is something. And I'm sure every capitalist is looking forward to this venture as well, too, and capitalize on the new technology. It's going to be amazing, I have to say that.
It is. It's exciting. There's so many things coming about that are exciting, and they're better. They make life better for people. They make life safer and more enjoyable. And I know that there's a lot of focus on, well, they take jobs away. Well, those are jobs that naturally were going to go away, and it will create a market for new jobs. You know, the real question is, do we have the wherewithal to be able to retrain people and help people transition into those new jobs?
And I think that's something to talk about next time. Love to have you back on again. I mean, you're just fantastic. I love to talk about the future with you and just about everything and anything possible. And, before we wrap up here, we'd love to have you back on again soon, sometime in 2020 and beyond. That is for sure. I have to say that. I do look in the future. We will be talking in 2020 or after that for sure. Who are some of your favorite writers growing up?
Well, Alvin Toffler, and that's why it was a great honor. E.O. Wilson, the greatest naturalist in the world. I was very fond of him. And of course, my biggest hero was Carl Sagan.
That is amazing as well, too, with billions and billions. I have to say that.
Yeah,
And of course,
I love Carl Sagan. I couldn't get enough of him when I was a young girl.
That's one of my favorite shows, too. Also, maybe think about the futurist George Orwell wrote 1941. And what were some of your thoughts on that?
Oh, I loved that book. I loved anything that was, Ray Bradbury, any science fiction. I was really a geek at a time when geeks weren't billionaires. I was a geeky girl that no one asked to the dances. And, I started the chess club in my school, and I was very nerdly. And who knew that nerds were going to be billionaires and be hipsters? Had no idea at the time.
And just maybe think of this, and the geeks shall inherit the earth.
Yes, I really think the geeks are inheriting the earth. But, my timing was definitely off.
I have to say, you do a great job of predicting the future. Love to have you back on as well, too. And who do you consider biggest influence in your career?
I would say Edward O. Wilson out of Harvard University. His first book, Sociobiology, was such an eye-opener to me, and it really put me on a different trajectory than I had planned to be. So I have to give him all the credit for my career.
That is fantastic. And I'm sure he could see a lot of things, great things ahead as well, too. And what's the best advice you give to anybody at this point?
I would say, learn as much as you can and try to get out ahead of change. Don't wait for it to come knocking at your door. And people can go to my website at www.rebeccacosta.com, and they can catch a lot of videos of these nanobots and space-based solar. And just entertain yourself by learning about these things, because it's a lot of fun to go to a party or go to dinner and say, you know what, I just read this or I just saw this video and it blew my mind that this technology exists. Because if you think about the media today, there aren't a lot of outlets. We're so obsessed with Trump's latest tweet,
Oh
that
my gosh.
that we don't create any room for people to learn about these wonderful things that are being developed, and how helpful they're going to be.
Hmm. And I think that's a good point, too. I'd love to have you back on and talk more about that. And again, Rebecca Costa, American sociobiologist and futurist, author of Watchmans Rattle, On the Verge, and also key contributor to Aftershock, available on Amazon. Rebecca, you've been fantastic. Thank you very much for your time, and looking forward to having you on again soon, either in 2020, 2021, or down the road. Either way, once again, tell us about your upcoming projects, what's your website, how do people contact you, and where can people purchase your books?
Best thing is to go to the website at rebeccacosta.com.
That's fantastic. Rebecca, just want to say a big thank you for your time. You've been fantastic. Looking forward to having you again soon. Do us a favor, keep us up to date. And until then, we go back to the future.
Bye, Mike.